In the era before Crunchyroll, Japanese television exports were fairly hard to come by. Sure, there was a growing acceptance of anime, at least when it came to children's programming, but it's not like episodes of Kasarazu's Cat's Eye were airing on NBC. So unless you're willing to purchase exorbitantly priced tapes and DVDs at Suncoast Video, your options were limited to poorly translated real-time player videos and mail-order catalogs. But suddenly, an unlikely source came to the rescue when the Food Network picked up the Japanese hit Iron Chef. The concept was unique and extravagant. Each week, a highly skilled chef would enter the prestigious and totally fictional Kitchen Stadium to challenge one of the renowned Iron Chefs to a culinary face-off. However, the required key ingredient to each dish was left a secret to both competitors until the hour-long time limit began. Respected socialites and celebrities graded their various creations before declaring a victor. It was the perfect blend of game show, cooking, and combat sports. And while other countries have successfully localized the series, none match the grandiose spectacle of the original. Remarkably, the only video game adaptation so far is the 2008 Iron Chef America Supreme Cuisine, which was terrible. And that's a shame, as most cooking games are exceptionally fun, including my personal favorite, Ori no Ryouri, which we'll definitely talk about in a future video. But now we have Battle Chef Brigade, an action puzzler game and unabashed homage to the Japanese Iron Chef, a world of fantasy and seasoning, where being a cook isn't a simple job or hobby, but an act of war. After generations of conflict, mankind has finally overcome the monster onslaught. Now a century later, the Battle Chef Brigade defends the innocent, while expanding their recipe book designed around the remains of their enemies. Weird? Yes. Gruesome? Not as directly as you'd expect. The game's entire story and art could best be described as light. Mina, a good-natured country girl, runs away from home to join the Brigade, but admission requires weeks of testing and evaluation, which is accomplished through a series of contests resembling Iron Chef, with required ingredients, celebrity judges, and plenty of pomp and circumstance. Only difference is, contestants must hunt and kill monsters before serving them up. And here's where the problems begin. None of the combat feels good. It's just a series of melee strikes, dagger tosses, and wind magic, which lacks the textured connection between screen and controller. This is due to the intangible hitboxes, claustrophobic attacks, and loose movement, not to mention the bare-bone environmental design of floating platforms. It's functional, at least. As time went on, I knew where to locate each creature, and the customizable magic attacks add a welcome wrinkle. But the active combat is fairly forgettable and drags the pacing down. But the real work begins in the kitchen, combining the collected ingredients to craft royal cuisine. If you played any sort of match 3 puzzle game, the systems are fairly straightforward, rotating objects clockwise or counterclockwise in a 4-piece grid, connecting the green, red, and blue orbs to the same color to increase the flavor profile. And with each judge having a preference for fire, water, or earth seasoning, you'll have to pay extra special attention to what dish goes where, especially when damaged flavors are introduced, and too many rotations cause them to crumble. With a limited amount of space, fitting everything into a pan requires a lot of planning. Cutting out poisons and bones on the cutting board, using specialty ovens to slowly rank up the orbs over time, or using color-coded pans that require 2 items to be matched instead of 3. And with only 3 cookwares allowed per match, the strategy begins well before entering the kitchen. These sections are the main draw of Battle Chef, using the familiar puzzle genre, but with an added goal in mind. And there's a real sense of accomplishment when each flavor is maxed out to the judge's orders. There's even a couple of clever minigames based off the concept, such as replicating a pattern as a short-order cook, or advancing monster research by solving extra challenging puzzles. Now, truth be told, I marathoned this game in a single day, which added up to be around 11 hours. And let me tell you, this game does not have the variety needed for longer play sessions. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is a simple game with quick hit appeal. But there's one bit I just can't quite get over, and that would be the story itself. So the main character is Mina, a genuinely nice person with a nice family who still wants more out of life. Alright, cool. But why does that thing have to be murdering monsters? It just doesn't seem to be in her or really anyone else's character. It's kind of creepy. They just have these creatures hanging out outside, ready to be slaughtered. They need a whole military for this? Are these little bird things really causing that much trouble? And it gets weirder. When it's discovered the monster flesh is becoming more poisonous, the first order is to figure out how to cook poisonous monsters. Like, I don't know, maybe enjoy a salad every now and again. They've only been eating monsters for 100 years. How do they not have a backup diet? It's just strange to see this gang of colorful characters and a civilization so tolerant of different species, many of whom have loving relationships with friends and family, and yet also want to join a carnivorous cult. Anyway, one last touch is the gorgeous watercolor art style, covering the world in gentle pinks, greens, and peaches. But the high-detailed characters do come at the cost of animation. Beyond the monsters, Minna and her orc friend Thrash, who will appear in the action sequences, most of the cutscenes involve the cast teleporting from one pose to the next, which does add to the wonderful children's storybook graphics. And when things are relaxed and charming, Battleship Brigade is at its best. Solving puzzles and serving up original recipes works great on its own. If anything, Brigade suffers from being needlessly ambitious. Get rid of the half-baked combat, weird genocidal motives, and unnecessary characters. Like, here's Alex, he's Mina's sister's boyfriend. He volunteers to get the bags. Well, that was worth it. Had the developers taken more time to edit and narrow the concept, Battleship Brigade would likely be a stronger experience. But as it stands, it's an imaginative though inconsistent game that never quite establishes its rhythm.